You remember it vividly. The warm glow of the TV, the sound of the theme song, the familiar font on the cover of your favorite childhood book. The Berenstein Bears. You'd swear on your life it was spelled with an E. But now, every book, every official source, every scrap of so-called reality says it was never that way. It has always been the Berenstein Bears with an A. So what changed? The book? Or you? Welcome back to the Hauntings and Happenings podcast, where we pull back the veil on the world you think you know. I'm Casey, your guide into the strange and shadowy corners of memory, mystery, and meaning. Today we're diving headfirst into the Mandela Effect, a phenomenon where thousands, sometimes millions, of people remember the exact same thing. And yet they're all wrong. Or so we're told. Is this mass misremembering just a glitch in the human memory? A psychological hiccup? Or is it something else? Something bigger. Something that hints at alternate timelines, quantum rifts, or a universe that's quietly rewriting itself? In this episode, we'll follow the strange tale of how a false memory about Nelson Mandela's death birthed a movement. We'll explore some of the most infamous Mandela effects, from Looney Tunes to Fruit of the Loom, from Luke, I Am Your Father, to a children's monkey who may, or may not, have a tail. We'll talk about the brain's betrayal, with insights from psychology and neuroscience. And then we'll peel back the layers of reality to ask, is there more going on here? As Joe Phelan explains in his article for Live Science titled, What is the Mandela Effect and Have You Experienced It? The phenomenon is when many people believe that something happened when, in reality, it never did. Yet those who experience it aren't just wrong. They're certain. And that certainty, that's where the terror creeps in. This isn't just about misremembering a logo or a movie quote. It's about questioning the fabric of reality itself. Now, the Mandela Effect was coined in 2009 by paranormal researcher Fiona Broome. She was attending a conference, casually discussing her vivid memories of Nelson Mandela's funeral, his death in prison in the 1980s, the grieving nation, and the televised eulogies. But there was one problem. It never happened. Mandela was released from prison in 1990. He went on to become president of South Africa, and he passed away peacefully and very much alive in 2013. As Broome shared her memory, she discovered she wasn't alone. Others around her had the exact same recollection. Not just a vague impression, but specific emotional and sensory memories of an event that had never occurred. In her confusion and curiosity, she launched a website, and the phenomenon was quickly spread. And thus, the Mandela Effect was born. In her LinkedIn article, The Mandela Effect, a Curious Phenomenon of Collective False Memories, Fiona Broome writes, people remember an identical event in such detail, and it never really happened. I wanted to understand how and why. She wasn't trying to prove the supernatural. She was asking a deeper question. How can so many unrelated people be so sure of the same wrong thing? According to Ivy Wigmore in her article, What is the Mandela Effect?, published by TechTarget, The term refers to an observed phenomenon in which a large segment of the population misremembers a significant event or shares a memory of an event that did not actually occur. Wigmore explains that while some enthusiasts link the effect to the multiverse and quantum crossover theories, psychology offers a very different explanation: confabulation. An unintentional distortion of memory where the brain fills in gaps with false information that feels vividly real. In fact, the Mandela Effect has become one of the most popular and unsettling examples of collective false memory. In the article, What is the Mandela Effect? Examples and Explanations from Simply Psychology, it's defined as a phenomenon where a large group of people remember an event or detail differently from how it actually occurred, often attributing their false memories to alternative realities or universes. The authors go on to highlight 3 defining traits of the Mandela Effect. 1, it's recalling entire events that never happened. 2, warped memories where parts are wholly or partially false. And 3, multiple unrelated people sharing identical but incorrect memories. What makes the Mandela Effect different from a simple mistake is its collective scale and its emotional weight. As Neil Dagnall and Ken Drinkwater write in The Mandela Effect and the Science of False Memories, published by The Conversation, these false recollections often stem from memory distortions and something called the misinformation effect, where new or misleading information introduced after an event can alter the way we recall it. For example, in Mandela's case, some researchers believe people may have subconsciously merged his story with that of another South African activist, Steve Biko, who did die in custody during the apartheid era. Our minds, hungry for narrative cohesion, sometimes rewrite history to fit the emotional arc we expect. But that's just one explanation. And for many, it's not enough. Because at its core, the Mandela Effect isn't just about the wrong spelling on a cereal box. It's about losing trust in your memory. It's about looking at the world you've always known and realizing something's off. If your memories can lie to you, if your brain can betray you, then what else can't be trusted? The Mandela Effect doesn't just mess with facts. It shakes the foundation of reality itself. And it starts small. A logo, a quote, a brand name. You're sure you know it. But reality says otherwise. These aren't just typos or forgotten facts. These are memories you would bet your life on, turned inside out. Let's walk through some of the most chilling and most widely reported Mandela effects and see if reality still lines up with what you remember. Let's start with the Berenstein Bears. Or is it Berenstein? This is arguably the Mandela effect that started it all. According to The Spectrum in Gabriela Marmet's article, Mandela Effect Confuses Purports Potential Parallel Universes, many people, including Marmet herself, remember the classic children's book series as Berenstein Bears, ending in EIN. But in our current reality, it's always been Berenstein, with an AIN. This simple change has thrown thousands of people into existential tailspins. Your host is included in that. After all, you read those books. You saw the covers. You said the name out loud. And now you're being told you've remembered it wrong your whole life? Then there's Darth Vader, perhaps the most iconic line in film history. "Luke, I am your father." Except that's not the line. In Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, Vader never says Luke. The actual line is, "No, I am your father." As Wigmore points out, this type of collective misquote is common, and it's not just a memory glitch. It's emotional anchoring. The name Luke added emphasis. It grounded the line. Our minds revised it to make the moment even more dramatic. And in Snow White, "Mirror, mirror on the wall." Nope. It's magic mirror on the wall. Always has been. Now let's talk about Febreze. If you remember it being spelled Febreeze with 2 E's in the middle, you're not alone. But in this timeline, it's spelled with a single E. Febreze. Don't believe me? Go check your cabinets now. I'll wait. There's also Fruit of the Loom. What do you picture? Grapes, apples, and a cornucopia, right? That woven horn of plenty behind the fruit? Never existed. As noted in Phelan's article for Live Science, these kinds of memory errors can often involve something called gist memory, where we remember the concept, but not the exact detail. A brand with fruit? Of course there's a cornucopia. Except there's not. And trust me, that one still shakes me to my core. Even Oscar Mayer isn't safe. You might remember it spelled Oscar Mayer, Meyer, with an E, because of the famous jingle, "My baloney has a first name." But the packaging has always said Mayer. Our phonetic memory misled us. Geography has even entered the realm of Mandela Effect confusion. Many people claim that South America is in a different position than how they remember it on the world map, shifted far to the east, closer to Africa. Others are startled to see where New Zealand is located. Another widely reported Mandela Effect? The number of US states. Some people remember learning there were 51, or even 52. Why? Some theories point to the confusion with Puerto Rico or Washington, D.C., but others suggest something stranger, an alternative educational memory from another timeline. Human anatomy has also fallen prey to the Mandela Effect. Multiple sources, including Sharon Mitchell's piece, The Mandela Effect in AI, The Importance of Sanitized Training Data, note how many people recall the human heart on the left side of the chest. But, according to current science, it's located almost dead center. The bones of the eye socket and the ribs have been flagged as wrong by people who study anatomy decades ago. Have the diagrams changed? Or has the timeline? One of the most bizarre Mandela effects is the case of Shazam, a movie starring comedian Sinbad as a genie in the 1990s. Thousands insist they remember watching it, renting it on VHS, even recalling specific scenes. The problem? It never existed. There is no movie. Sinbad never played a genie. You're thinking of Kazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal. Supposedly. Even Sinbad has joked about the phenomenon on Twitter. But some people swear they own the tape. Is this a case of childhood confusion? Or a timeline split? These examples are more than curiosities. They strike at something deeper. They challenged what we thought was certain. And if you're wrong about these memories, what else might you be wrong about? So, what if the Mandela Effect isn't proof of alternative timelines or broken realities, but proof of how fragile and fickle our minds really are? Psychology has long known that memory is not a perfect recording. It's a living, shifting construct, part fact, part imagination, and part social glue. Let's break down the most common scientific explanations behind the Mandela Effect. One of the most cited explanations is confabulation, a process where the brain unintentionally fills in memory gaps with fabricated, distorted, or misinterpreted information. In Wigmore's article, she explains that confabulated memories may seem every bit as clear and detailed as events that have actually happened, and aren't created with any intent to deceive. They feel real, even when they're entirely false. The issue isn't deception, it's the brain's desperate desire to make sense of the chaos. Another factor at play is the schema theory. The idea that we interpret and remember new information based on patterns we already know. When something doesn't fit, we unconsciously adjust it to match our expectations. Phelan touches on this in his article for Live Science, quoting psychologist Tim Hollins, who explains that many false memories appear to be gist memories adapted to fit people's existing beliefs or knowledge. Take Curious George, for example. People often remember him having a tail. Why? Because monkeys have tails. If your memory stored him under the file folder monkey, your brain may have added the tail without you even realizing it. Psychologists have even tested how our minds create false memories in laboratory settings. One famous method is the Dease, Roediger, McDermott, or DRM paradigm, explained in David Ludin's article, The Mandela Effect: How Do Collective False Memories Work for Psychology Today. In this experiment, participants are often shown lists of related words like bed, rest, tired, and later asked to recall them. Time and time again, people remember seeing the word sleep, even though it was never there. Their brains fill in the logical gap because the missing word fits the pattern. It's not an error. It's just the brain trying to tell a better story. This doesn't just apply to language. The visual Mandela effect is real too. In testing the visual Mandela effect for Psychology Today Ireland, Christopher Dwyer describes an experiment in which participants were shown multiple versions of iconic logos, Pikachu, the Fruit of the Loom logo, and others. Shockingly, people consistently picked incorrect versions that matched the false memories seen online. It shows how easy it is to remember what we've never actually seen, especially when the internet helps anchor that image in our collective minds. Then there's the misinformation effect, where exposure to new, incorrect information reshapes your existing memories. Ludin explains that in controlled studies, participants shown misleading details after an event, such as changing a stop sign to a yield sign in written description, actually recall the altered version with confidence. In other words, memory isn't about storing facts, it's about rebuilding them each time you access them. And every time you remember, you risk rewriting. In the digital age, memory becomes even more malleable. Online forums, Reddit threads, YouTube videos, these aren't just entertainment. They are reinforcement loops. In Broom's article, she notes that it was the collective validation of her false memory that sparked the entire phenomenon. When people confirm your distorted recollection, it becomes harder, not easier, to question it. And this contagion is measurable. In the Forbes article, What It Takes to Foster a Data-Driven Culture, the authors note that Mandela Effect communities on Reddit boast over 200,000 members, and related YouTube videos have garnered millions of views. This isn't just personal confusion. It's a shared delusion amplified by algorithms. Finally, there's cryptomnesia, when you forget where an idea came from and mistake it as your own memory. In The Mandela Effect and How Your Mind is Playing Tricks on You for National World, Suswati Basu writes that many so-called Mandela memories come from TV parodies, memes, or conversations that masquerade as original recall. So that Sinbad movie that you remember, it may have been a joke poster, a meme, or a line in a YouTube comment you read years ago. And your brain simply adopted it. In the end, what science tells us is simple and a little unnerving. Your memory is not a vault. It's a story, constantly edited by your expectations, your culture, and your community. And sometimes that story belongs more to the collective internet than it does to you. So far, we've grounded the Mandela Effect in science. Brain glitches, false memories, the influence of the internet. But not everyone is convinced that psychology can fully explain what's happening. Some believe there's something bigger at play. Something more cosmic, more metaphysical, and perhaps more terrifying. Let's step through the veil and explore the theories that attempt to explain the Mandela Effect, not as a memory flaw, but as a breach in reality itself. One of the most popular metaphysical explanations for the Mandela Effect is the multiverse theory, the idea that infinite parallel universes exist, each slightly different from the next. In this view, you did grow up reading the Berenstein Bears. That version of reality was real. You just don't live there anymore. In the article, Could Quantum Mechanics Explain the Mandela Effect for Big Think? Philip Perry explores this possibility. He explains that quantum physicists have theorized that we may inhabit one of an infinite number of universes, each containing a different version of ourselves and the world around us. Perry connects this to Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation, which posits that every quantum decision branches reality into multiple outcomes. So, what if some people, accidentally and unknowingly, slip between these branches? Could a child who read Berenstein Bears find themselves waking up years later in a universe where only the Berenstein Bears ever existed? To believers, this is more than sci-fi. It's a chilling explanation for why entire groups remember the same wrong details. They're not wrong. They're just not from here. In 2012, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, better known as CERN, announced the discovery of the Higgs boson, or God particle, using the Large Hadron Collider. The scientific world rejoiced, but conspiracy theorists? Oh, they panicked. As detailed in The Mandela Effect, A Curious Phenomenon of Collected False Memories by Fiona Broome, many believers tie the beginning of Mandela memory distortions to the activation of the collider. They argue that smashing subatomic particles at nearly the speed of light may have accidentally fractured the fabric of space-time. The Forbes article notes that one of the most common conspiracy threads is that CERN caused a splinter in time and space when the collider was activated. Believers claim we slipped into a neighboring timeline, a sort of cosmic hiccup. The original version of history still exists, but we're no longer living it. Of course, there's no scientific evidence that any timeline fracture occurred, but for those who feel the world got slightly stranger around 2012, the collider becomes a convenient and eerie culprit. And if we're not in the wrong universe, maybe we're not in a universe at all. Simulation theory suggests that we are living inside a hyper-advanced digital simulation, like a cosmic version of the Matrix. And just like in a video game, glitches occasionally occur, bugs in the system that rewrites logos, quotes, and historical events. In The AI Mandela Effect and Cognitive Manipulation and Superintelligence by Rob Smith, he warns that increasingly powerful AI systems, including those training language models and filtering information online, may actually be contributing to these perceived glitches. Smith explores the unsettling idea that digital systems are becoming so deeply embedded in our information loop that they are reshaping what we think is real. In this version of the Mandela Effect, we're not shifting timelines. We're watching the code update mid-simulation. If your childhood book changes spelling, it's not a false memory. It's a patch note. Fringe communities take things even further. Some believe the Mandela Effect is evidence of intentional manipulation, a quiet war on memory waged by shadowy organizations. On conspiracy forums and TikTok threads, you'll find whispers of MKUltra, DARPA, and mind control programs, all allegedly capable of reprogramming or rewriting reality. The idea here is that reality editing is not only possible, but being conducted in secret, via mass media, AI, or even covert technology at government levels. While these theories are largely speculative and lack scientific credibility, they reflect deep mistrust and institutional control over truth. In an age where deep fakes can alter video and AI can convincingly fabricate images and text, these fears don't seem as far-fetched as they once did. The Mandela Effect, in this view, is not a glitch. It's a warning. Finally, some theorists draw from Jungian psychology, proposing that the Mandela Effect is part of a psychic evolution, a ripple in our collective unconsciousness. In The Mandela Effect and Science of False Memories, Neil Dagnall and Ken Drinkwater acknowledge that many people believe humanity is undergoing a vibrational and dimensional shift, and that shared memory distortions are signs of a larger, energetic awakening. This theory proposes that we are moving through a metaphysical transformation, either ascending to higher consciousness or merging with alternative selves from other timelines. While difficult to prove, this view reframes the Mandela Effect as something spiritual, a sign that humanity is crossing into our charted territory, one shared memory at a time. Now, whether you believe in cultural rifts, simulation code, or psychic evolution, one thing is certain. The Mandela Effect speaks to something deep inside us. A fear that what we remember, what we trust, what we know might not be true. Or worse, it was true once, but now it's gone. The Mandela Effect may start with a spelling change or a misquoted movie line, but it doesn't stay there. It digs deeper into our sense of self, of truth, of stability. That's why it unsettles us, because it's not just about getting something wrong. It's about realizing the foundations of your memory might be cracked. Memory is how we orient ourselves in the world. It's the map we carry in our heads to navigate everything, our childhood, our relationships, our identity. But what happens when the map turns out to be wrong? In The Mandela Effect, What It Is and How It Happens from Very Well Mind, the author explains that false memories can have profound effects, especially when they involve events tied to personal identity or collective history. The Mandela Effect shakes those anchor points. It tells us that the things we believed were solid, bedrock facts of childhood and culture, are not solid at all. You may brush it off when you learn that the Monopoly man never had a monocle, but when every person you know remembers him the same way, and yet reality refuses to reflect that, that's not just disorienting. It's deeply unsettling. The Mandela Effect also pokes at something even more fragile: our trust, not just in facts, but in ourselves. If you can't trust your memory, what can you trust? Your senses, other people, news articles, history books? In Basu's article, she notes that many people feel genuine distress when they discover their memories didn't match reality. It leads to a loss of confidence in personal recollection, and sometimes even paranoia about external manipulation. These moments cause more than confusion. They cause doubt, not just in memory, but in reality itself. And this is where the Mandela Effect leaves the psychological and becomes existential. If thousands of people can remember the same wrong thing with total certainty, what does that say about the nature of truth? Are facts really fixed? Or are they fluid, vulnerable to time and culture, technology, and collective memory? In the article, The Mandela Effect, How a Psychological Phenomenon Took Over the Internet by A.J. Willingham for CNN, she points out that the Mandela Effect has become a kind of cultural litmus test, a way to explore what happens when reality and perception collide. In a world where deepfakes are indistinguishable from reality, and AI can rewrite history with a click, the Mandela Effect is a symptom of a larger fear: that the truth itself is disappearing. And for many, that's the real horror. That it's not just your memory that's unreliable. It's everything. And whether you chalk it up to psychology, quantum timelines, or social contagion, the Mandela Effect taps into something ancient and primal: our need to believe that we see and remember what is real. But what if it isn't? We've talked theory, we've talked memory, we've even talked multiverse. But what happens when you put the Mandela Effect under a microscope? What happens when scientists try to test these false memories to prove they're not just quirks, but patterns? Let's take a look at some of the most telling experience and real-world case studies that reveal how easy it is for our brains to betray us. One of the most famous researchers in the study of memory distortion is Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, whose groundbreaking work on eyewitness testimony has reshaped how we think about memory in law, trauma, and culture. In multiple experiments over decades, Loftus showed how easy it is to implant false memories. In one study, participants watched footage of a car accident. Later, those who were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other recalled higher speeds or even shattered glass, compared to those asked the same question with the word hit instead. No glass was shown. No difference existed, except the language used. And yet, the memory changed. In another experiment, participants were told a story about being lost in a shopping mall as a child. A completely fabricated story. After some time, many subjects began to remember it happening. They added details, how they felt, what they saw, turning fiction into a memory. As described in Dagnall's and Drinkwater's article, Loftus's work proves that memory is malleable, fallible, and subject to distortion. And that's not just theory. It's fact, proven in labs and courtrooms. False memory is one thing, but shared false memories? That's where the internet becomes a kind of mental mirror, amplifying every distortion until it becomes reality. On Reddit, the Mandela Effect subreddit has over 200,000 members, sharing examples of misremembered events, logos, and facts. In the AI Mandela Effect and Cognitive Manipulation and Superintelligence, Rob Smith discusses how online ecosystems function as reinforcement loops, validating and solidifying shared memories. Reddit AMAs, YouTube deep dives, TikTok rabbit holes, all of these spaces aren't just archives of oddities. They're living laboratories of collective memory distortion. In one informal Reddit experiment, users were shown multiple versions of famous logos and asked to choose the correct one. The results mirrored findings in academic studies like those described in Testing the Visual Mandela Effect by Christopher Dwyer, where most people consistently chose incorrect versions, even when the real one was right in front of them. The internet isn't just where we share false memories. It's where we create them. So now I want to turn the tables. Think you've never experienced the Mandela Effect? Go check your childhood bookshelf. Dig out those old VHS tapes, if you still have them. Look up logos you think you remember. Find that cereal box, that quote, that movie scene. And then ask yourself, why were you so sure of something that never existed? I'll tell you the one that really gets to me. The one that really shakes me because I am so certain that it existed. We Are the Champions by Queen. How does that song end? Couldn't you swear it's with a final of the world? Go listen. You might be surprised. So what is the Mandela Effect really? Is it just a glitch in memory, easily explained by schema theory, confabulation, and misinformation? Or is it something deeper? Something stranger? A bleed through from another universe, a flicker in the simulation, a cosmic hiccup that leaves us haunted by echoes of a world that used to be. We've explored memory recall experiments by Elizabeth Loftus that prove how easily we can be led astray. We've seen collective digital illusions take shape in Reddit threads and TikTok videos. We've touched the edges of quantum theory, simulated reality, and government manipulation. And still, no single explanation feels fully satisfying. Because when thousands, even millions of people remember the exact same thing incorrectly, we have to ask, are we all mistaken? Or is there something, someone rewriting the script? Maybe reality is a little more porous than we thought. Maybe memory isn't a mirror, but a foggy window. One that shows us glimpses of a world we can no longer reach. If you suddenly feel like you're remembering a world that no longer exists, maybe you're not crazy. Maybe you just slipped into the wrong timeline. And then we're left to wonder, will we ever get back? Thank you for joining us on today's journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed this episode of Hauntings and Happenings, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow seekers of the strange. Got a story, theory, or a haunted hotspot you want us to explore? Reach out to us at our email, hauntingsandhappenings@gmail.com, and you might just hear it in a future episode. Remember, the world is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and together, we'll keep searching. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, stay spooky, and of course, keep it weird.